All the baddies strap it right here.
I'm Langston Allston. I'm an artist, a painter, and a muralist, and I make work that's like about storytelling right now. So the project that I just finished in Chicago was for the National Public Housing Museum, and so to do that project, because I didn't grow up in public housing or grow up in Chicago, the entire thing was based on like doing research and going through the archives that the museum had to like get the stories and like find them and tell them through listening to people's own firsthand accounts of what they experienced living there, you know, things that were positive, things that were negative, just like experiences of being there. And that was like the first time I had really done something that was like storytelling that was not really attached to my life at all, like that wasn't things that I had in some way directly experienced or directly witnessed. It was like the first time I had done like a project like that. But the method for doing that, like in terms of like the visual style that it was, where it was like big illustrations with like stories written all the way around to kind of like describe what was going on and like bring the viewer into the space, came from me making these like big pieces in New Orleans that were like investigating my relationship with my loved ones around the country, but like especially in New Orleans, and like the spaces that I like go to in the city, because I'm like new to New Orleans. I moved there about 3 years ago, and it's like it's kind of a complicated place to move to because it's gentrifying really quickly. So I made a bunch of work kind of investigating that relationship a little bit, where it was just like, why am I here? What do I love about it? Who do I love? Like, how do I know them? What's my story with them? What's my relationship to them? And what's my relationship to the place? And like the writing was really a stream of consciousness. It was just like I would draw the picture of like somebody I cared about or some place that I cared about, and then I would just like write my like love story with them, like all the way around. And so that's like where the format came from. And so a lot of those stories were like about a person, and the goal was to really just like tell those stories clearly and honestly. Even though I was like writing in the stream of consciousness way, I was like genuinely learning about my relationships with people while I was writing them. And so that was like, that's like the first place that this like storytelling exercise really got literal. And then when I came to do this residency earlier this summer, I took that like style and that idea of just like telling like honest stories really legibly and clearly by like literally writing them into the drawings, and like just made work out of that. Generally, people are like pretty stoked about it, honestly. Like people like come in and like get excited because they'll like see like moments that maybe they didn't remember, and then be like, damn, like I forgot all about that shit. And I feel like it resonates when you like remind your friends how much you pay attention to them or like how much you care. Like the ways that you move subtly, I feel like speak the most about how you like treat people and how you interact with people. And like you can learn a lot from just like really closely watching people do that. And I think everybody does learn a lot from doing that, but sometimes they don't name it, you know? Like you'll point to like some big event or some action, but really it was like, you know, a small statement or how you acted to like this like random stranger, or just like how you carry yourself when you move through the world that like shapes your perception of people or people's perception of you. And so like the drawings that are up, portraits of people, are as much about like these like big event arcs, like love story style arcs that I have with like all my like friends and loved ones, as they are about just like the little ways that we interact together. And then the ones that are about like places are like really just about like the small ways that people act in those places that really make them unique. I grew up in Champaign-Urbana. It's like a pretty small town. It's like a college town, so it's like relatively more liberal, but like it's like pretty white and pretty small. And so as an artist growing up there, like I think my views on what radical art was and like what it meant to do art that was radical were like more like colored by like what was radical to the people around me. And like since leaving, my like way of making work has changed a lot, and the way that I like think about art being a radical process has changed a lot. So like when I was there, and I still look at like Emory Douglas and stuff very closely, like artists like that who make like deliberately activist didactic work, right? Like those were people that I was looking at as activist artists, and like art that I wanted to make was like that, where it's like, I wanted to essentially make propaganda, which I think is valuable, and is radical, but now to me is a little bit boring because I feel like it speaks to people who already are mobilized for a certain cause, and it speaks to people who don't know very much about that cause. Like, it's like a clear call to action, and it's like you respond to it how you're going to respond to it, but it doesn't necessarily have a lot of nuance. And like, to me, that got like, it wasn't the type of thing, it wasn't the type of stories I wanted to tell anymore, you know? I wanted to start talking about like my experiences in the most genuine way possible, and like sometimes those things aren't conventionally radical, right? But it's like, just, I feel like being honest about what you're experiencing and who you are and where you are is like I feel like that's radical because it's like loving yourself and loving the people around you, and like also telling the truth to them and to you. And so that's kind of the direction that I went, like, since I've left home. Is like, instead of trying to like tell everybody what, you know, major activist cause they need to be engaged with, it's more like, these are the people that I'm around, this is like why I love them, this is why it's important to like pay attention. And that's kind of like what I'm focused on most now. I'm Langston Allston. I'm an artist, a painter, and a muralist, and I make work that's like about storytelling right now.
Yeah. All the baddies, drop it right here.